A city council stood in front of cameras and made a promise. Build it and they will come. Thousands of jobs, millions in tax revenue every year, a new identity for a struggling city. All the city had to do in return was hand over prime public land and issue hundreds of millions of dollars in municipal bonds to build a stadium for a billionaire sports franchise. This is the story of how publicly funded stadium deals actually work, and it follows the same pattern in city after city. Here is the basic structure. A sports franchise threatens to relocate to another city unless it gets a new stadium. The current city, terrified of losing the team and the civic identity attached to it, agrees to fund construction using public money, usually through municipal bonds that taxpayers will be repaying for decades. In exchange, the franchise typically keeps the majority of revenue generated inside the building. Ticket sales, parking, concessions, beer and merchandise, corporate luxury suites, and naming rights almost always flow to the team owner, not the city that paid for the building. The economic argument made to the public is that the stadium will generate enormous indirect benefits: tourism, restaurant spending, hotel bookings on game days, construction jobs, permanent employment at the venue. Here is what independent economic research consistently finds when these promises are checked against actual outcomes years later. The vast majority of academic studies on publicly funded stadiums find that the promised economic boost does not materialize at anywhere near the scale projected during the original pitch. Many of the jobs created are part-time, seasonal, and low-wage, concentrated around a handful of game days per year rather than steady year-round employment. The tax revenue generated by the stadium itself frequently fails to cover the debt service on the bonds used to build it, meaning the city ends up subsidizing the shortfall from its general budget, the same budget that funds schools, roads, and emergency services. There is also a substitution effect that rarely gets mentioned in the original pitch. Money spent at a stadium is often money that would have been spent somewhere else in the local economy anyway. A family that spends $200 at a game is a family that likely would have spent close to that amount at a local restaurant or entertainment venue, regardless. The stadium does not necessarily create new economic activity, it frequently just redirects existing spending toward a venue the city paid to build and does not own a meaningful share of. And here is the part that completes the cycle. Stadiums built with public money in the 1990s and 2000s are now considered outdated by the same franchises that demanded them. Roughly 15 to 20 years after a new stadium opens, the team often returns to the negotiating table, threatening relocation again unless the city funds renovations or an entirely new facility. Cities that have already invested hundreds of millions of dollars and built their civic identity around the team find themselves with very little leverage. They have already shown they will pay. This is not a story about whether professional sports add value to a city's culture and identity. They genuinely can. This is a story about who pays for that value and who profits from it. In the majority of publicly funded stadium deals, the franchise owner ends up controlling a valuable modern asset that generates significant private revenue while the city carries the public debt used to build it. The stadium gets the lights, the crowds, and the headlines. The taxpayers get the bill, on a 30-year repayment schedule, long after the ribbon-cutting ceremony is forgotten.